Orange County depends on WDXE News on the air since 1951. This is the legend. 1053
And with that, it's time for Stan Pierchoski and Bulletproof Estate Planning. Stan is back.
Good morning, Jeff.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, we had a weekend off,
A little sabbatical for Easter sabbatical.
the Easter holiday, and so you are back, and so we'll probably have a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, so we played a recorded version last week. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. We did. I'm not sure which one, but I think we did. Getting your headphones adjusted.
If you can hear me, that sounds good.
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Joe's a little more hard to hear.
Yeah, Joe turns those headphones up, doesn't he? Yes, he does. All right.
We did have a good weekend. Had some family come over, and I think we kind of did most of it on Saturday because to fit everybody's schedule. But nonetheless, we had a good weekend.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Got to see folks and
got to see family. Everybody good.
Sure did. And the weather was decent. And
yeah. Yeah.
it's going to be decent this weekend too. Apparently, I was walking by the news this morning, and there's like no rain in sight for a while. So
yeah, there's not, and we could actually use some rain. I think it's been kind of dry, but anyway, there's no rain in the forecast right now.
Trouble with the rain like that is when it comes, it'll all come at once. You get like 8 inches in one evening.
Let's hope.
We can use we can use a little more of a wetting down now and another one tomorrow or another in 2 days.
Right.
But you get all at once, you get all so much runoff. It doesn't really anyway.
Right.
It doesn't do as much good as if you get it over time. So
exactly.
But it is April, so I'm pretty much banking on it coming.
Yeah, let's do hope. We need some showers. We do those April showers, they say. Yep.
Well, to get caught up on seminars coming up, the next one coming up is April the 25th. So, what's today? The 10th?
Yeah, it's not going to be far away.
No, so right at 2 weeks tomorrow, I guess. And that one is going to be. Remember, this is one where it wasn't one of my regularly scheduled one. I was invited by the Marshall County Memorial Library. Mm-hmm. They're doing something over in Marshall County throughout the month, I believe, and they're doing different get-togethers with different topics for seniors.
Yeah,
and I'll see if I can't get a list of what that is. I don't know that I've seen it. I think the girls in the office have. But anyway, they reached out to me and said they would like somebody to talk about estate planning to their seniors. And we managed to structure it so it really is almost seamless to me because it's the same seminar I give. It's just going to be on a Saturday, which is when we give them. It's going to be at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is when we normally do it anyway. And but it's just one that I'm not sponsoring. I'm more a person that was invited there. But it's the same. If you came to it, it would be seamless as if you came to one of my regularly scheduled ones.
Sure.
So, anyway, it's Saturday, April the 25th. It's called Will's Trust in the Nursing Home, and it's going to be at 10 o'clock that morning. And the place where it's at is the Marshall County Memorial Library. Now, if you want I'll give you the physical address for that. If you want to go there, I'm not familiar with Lewisburg. It's 310 Old Farmington, that's Farmington, Farmington Road, and that's in Lewisburg, Tennessee. So, it's a pretty nice little place and a nice drive over there, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
Hopefully the weather's going to be great. And you can come to that. And I'll bring that up again at the end of the hour. But if you do decide to come over there, I do want to give a little bit of advice, and this is good advice to heed, and that is when you go to Lewisburg, don't speed.
Don't speed going to Lewisburg.
As soon as you cross the line that says Marshall County, just
obey the speed limit.
I'm saying be cautious and just do what you're supposed to do. Because now I have not personally experienced it, but I used to practice when I did criminal work. I would go over there often.
Yeah.
And I just know that a lot of people complain that they it's somewhat of a speed trap.
Yeah.
But if you're speeding, I don't know how much of a trap it is if you're speeding, right?
Right.
But when I used to go through, it's like 30 miles an hour through the town area.
Yeah.
And I used to just put my car on cruise control and let it crawl for 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's just, and usually there's somebody behind you that looks pretty impatient, and because you're going so slow.
Well, I've had the privilege of receiving a ticket there many years ago.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
But I mean, like I said, I put it on cruise on like 30. It used to be cruise wouldn't go that low, but now they do, and it just crawls at 30 miles an hour. Like, a lot of times I look in the rearview mirror and somebody behind me is kind of anxious, kind of going so slow.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to just stop and get out and walk back to them and say, really, you should say thank you.
You should thank me.
Get mad at me. Get thank you
That's
because
right.
I'm keeping you from getting a ticket.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
I don't think the exposure over there of not getting one is very high. So anyway, that's just some free advice.
Absolutely.
But yeah, well, I'll bring it up again at the end of the hour. Then our next one is late in May. I didn't look before I came to see the date, but it'll be a Saturday somewhere around there in probably the second to last Saturday of the month.
Yeah.
And that's going to be at the Star Theater. I do know that, in Pulaski. So anyway, I did want to mention, when we go to these seminars, and one of the things that we do a lot of is this asset protection trust. You heard me talk about it all the time.
That's right.
And as I was walking, when I come in this morning, I was walking by the WLX station. Mark was in there with a bunch of people. They did that morning show.
Yeah.
And as I was walking by, they were taking a break, but a commercial was playing.
Yeah.
And the commercial was from a roofing company that part of their advertisement was, protect your biggest asset.
Right.
And of course, if you're protecting your roof, what can happen is your roof leaks, causes some damage, right? And you want to protect that. Well, I think that's excellent advice, of course. But in my business, why not protect that biggest asset you own from total exhaustion, to totally being removed? If your estate planning's not right, and somebody with long-term care comes into play, the entire house can be consumed by that debt.
Right.
So it's good advice, and it works in several different disciplines and areas of life. Sure, keep it up, keep it in good shape, so that you have it to give it to your kids. I mean, you don't want it to get run down and leave it to the kids with holes in the roof.
That's right.
In my business, you want to have it, period, to give to the kids.
That's right.
So,
well, we got a caller, I think. We'll see if we do anyway. Good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes?
Do you have that Pierchoski's phone number at Pulaski?
I'll have to call you back, okay, buddy?
Yeah, okay.
I'll have to call you back, okay? Sorry about that.
Right.
Sometimes we get calls for numbers that we've got. So,
gotcha.
Anyway,
No problem.
it happens. It happens.
If I can't remember a number throughout the day, I'll give you a quick ring.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No. What was he asking?
Just now?
Yeah.
I almost thought he asked for mine.
That was what he was asking. I misunderstood him. Yes.
Well, I'll give them
Let's
number
do
just
that
in
number.
case. Just in case.
Yeah, let's do that
If
number.
it's a different number, he better call back.
I'm
get
sorry.
back with you.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood what he was. I thought he was asking for a
was-
number off the trading post.
The reception of the calls was a little bit scratchy. So,
Yeah. That's my fault, Ronnie. We'll get it for you right now.
Yeah, if he was asking for my office in Pulaski, it's 931-363-7222.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My apologies. I thought he was asking for a number on the trading post, and I'm sorry because he was asking for that number 363-7222.
Well,
Yeah.
Mr. Jeff, all I can say is that's how it starts.
Yes. It started. I promise.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, the business about protecting your asset. I mean, that's when we do our asset protection trust, it is very, very common that the only thing people put into it is their real estate.
Right.
And when you think about it, that makes perfect sense because it is a very large asset that the average person owns,
Right.
if not the biggest asset. That's like on the roofing commercial. It said, protect the biggest asset that you own. And for probably 90 to 95% of people, that is the biggest. That's the lion's share of the estate. And when you talk about real estate, I mean, it depends on what year it is, but it's usually always going up for one thing,
Right.
and sometimes it's just screaming up rapidly, And it's like any other market, it's up and down, but it seems like it's always 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. So the net is always an increase. And again, it's right now. I mean, it doesn't take much to have a $100,000 or $200,000 home.
Oh, no, not at all.
I mean, that's really on the low end. I mean, probably
absolutely.
the average home is probably right in the middle. $500,000, $400,000 or $500,000 for average. I don't know. You're in the real estate business, but it's a lot.
Our average might not be quite that much here as far as average home, but at any rate, we've got we got a higher average than you might think.
And it's going to change next year because 2027 is the next 5-year census.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, back 2022 is when they jumped way up.
Yeah. Let's see if we have a caller here. Hey, good morning. You're on the air with us.
Can you hear me?
I can.
This is a question I want to ask Mr. Pierchoski if he's ever heard of. This is someone in another state that their parents would be eligible they have a trust, but I don't know if it's revocable or irrevocable. But they put their two houses outside the trust. The two houses were not in the trust, and they put their name, the three adult children, they're in their 60s now, on their houses. So evidently their name's on the deed, and I don't think it's with their parents, but I guess it could be. But this is the situation they're in. The parents are elderly, like 880s and early 90s. They're on Social Security. They have been paying $8,000 a month to keep them at home. I don't think they would qualify for Medicaid, but one of my questions is, has he ever heard of that? And it seems to me like from what this person, they just use me as a sounding board. I don't know a lot. That even though they've got their money on these houses and they're fully paid, they can't agree. One does not want to put them in a nursing home, and they're going through $8,000 a month. I just wanted to throw that out because to prevent that, but if you're already in that situation, does he see any options? And just throw it out as to the pluses of having different ways.
All right, thank you for your call. Well, all right, I'm sure that's done.
Well, I'm going to do the best I can because as the question was coming out, it was multiple variables.
Yeah.
It's like another state,
Right,
stuff in a trust, don't know if it's revocable or irrevocable, which makes a big difference.
right,
Don't know whose name's on a deed, whether the owner or the kids that are now in their 60s.
right,
So, I mean, all that makes it, but no matter what the circumstances work out to be on that, I mean, I guarantee you there's an option to make it better.
yeah,
$8,000 a month to stay at home is, probably about right. Just, all that depends on the level of care that
Sure,
you need. The more
sure.
you need, the more it costs.
Right.
And typically when you get to 24/7, it's more than what the nursing home costs.
right,
But I'm sure there's a way. Why the house? It sounds to me like she said the houses were not put in the trust. Now, if that's the end of the houses, then they're exposed.
yeah,
Now, one of them will not be exposed until their death if it's the primary residence, but it is exposed.
yeah,
In other words, when you have a primary residence, it's an excluded asset, which really means we're going to take it, not yet. We're going to wait till you pass away, and if your spouse is still living there, we'll wait till she passes away, but we're
Right.
going to come after the house at that point in time. So that one they're going to take it, it's just a deferred taking.
Sure.
Now, if they have two of them, one of them's got to be classified as other real estate, because something's your
Yeah.
primary residence and everything else is other real estate. That one is fully exposed. And so if it's in their name and it's not in that trust, that's an exposed asset. Now,
Sure.
there's things we can do with that. It's a little too math heavy to go on the radio, but there are options to deal with that. Now, if they're in the trust, now it depends on what kind of a trust, because if it's a revocable trust, it's not protected at all from creditors and long-term care. If it's in the right kind of an irrevocable trust, it is protected.
yeah,
But we didn't know if it was in. I think she's pretty sure that the houses were not in the trust.
Right.
Now it's kind of probably too late to put them in the trust because the trust, of course, needs a term of years to be fully functional
and fully protected.
yeah, for the protection, and we're kind of once they're already in care, that's usually not always the best choice because of that.
Right,
What was the last thing? Oh, now not knowing whose name it's in, whether it's in the children that are in their 60s or the owners, which in their 80s, maybe
Right.
early 90s. If it isn't a children's name, then the question is, when did that happen? If it happened more than 60 months ago, then there is full protection because that's outside the ability or the jurisdiction of the look-back rule.
Right.
The look-back rule is 60 months, and if it's 60 months in a day or more, then it's a protected transaction because it's only exposed if you do it. Now, if they gave it away and it's been less than the 60 months, then there's options there too.
Right.
But we basically want to try to get to the 60 months at that point.
right,
So, I guess the bottom line is, I don't think it's possible to hand me a set of circumstances that I can't come up with some beneficial approach to it.
yeah,
I mean, in other words,
Yeah.
as bleak as it may seem, I think I can always come up with something to make it better.
Right.
Now, in situations, I've had situations where it certainly wasn't ideal.
yeah,
But it was better than doing nothing at all. It was
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
The ideal thing is, here's the ideal thing. Pre-plan, get these assets into the trust 5 years before you go to the nursing home.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you don't have a crystal ball, but I'm saying this is what the optional plan is.
Yeah.
We don't know when that's going to happen, but but we can get it. We can hedge our bet on when it's going to happen.
Sure.
If you do it when you're in your 60s and retirement years, and you're not really having any health problems, then it's a pretty good statistical probability that we'll clear that 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole approach. Get it in, get by these 5 years. Then
Right.
that's the brass ring, so to speak. So now everything in there is protected. You never have to deal with it again. You never have to
Okay.
address it again. But we don't know anything. Of course, anything can happen. But let's
Sure.
do it at a time where anything that can happen is at a statistical low. And, well, I say when it's pretty much in the bag, and then get cleared. Now, if the trust is not always the tool we can use, but if it's not a tool we can use, then we have all these crisis planning tools
Sure.
for people that are actually in care, like maybe this situation. And,
Okay.
and those things represent options. An option might be that if they want to keep this house, they might be able to get a child or another family member or even another person. It's just another person to purchase a percentage of it, like 10 or 20%. I like to shoot for 20. I know that works. I'm pretty sure 10 would work, but I don't like to push the envelope. But I'm just saying, if somebody could purchase 20% of the house, now we've tied up the ownership, and now we can escape estate recovery, because now you have more than one owner, and the only way they can go after the only way they exercise estate recovery and recover is to sell the asset. And TennCare acknowledges the long-standing common law that Tennessee has, that you cannot force an owner to sell a piece of property.
Okay.
And so when they go after your 80% because you've been in a nursing home, the person that owns 20% can refuse to sell. And they have to honor that, and then they have to chalk it up as an inaccessible asset because they can't make the other owner sell. Now, that's doing that at the 11th hour, and somebody's got to come up with the money to buy it. But if we can do that, we save the house. It's a better result, especially if it's a family member. So
Yeah.
somebody say, well, I'm not inheriting the house. It's true. You're only inheriting 80% of it, but you could have inherited 100% if we'd done all this ahead of time. But hindsight's,
Right.
what do they say about hindsight? Hindsight is
Yeah.
50, hindsight is 20/20, right?
20/20.
And so, but we're not. We can't do that, but we can save 80% of it this way, right?
Well, that kind of ties into the question I had, because and you kind of answered it already a little bit, but I was thinking about, if you have a piece of real estate, and I hear this sometimes, well, I've signed this piece of real estate over to my kids years ago, to avoid this deal, okay? But if you have someone that has given them just, let's say that me and my son jointly own a piece of property.
Okay.
And then, God forbid, I'm in that circumstance where the TennCare needs to liquidate my assets or whatever. So they can't force him to sell.
That's right.
But if he did sell it,
They can only go after your.
they can only go after the ownership that's
Of what
mine.
you own, that's right.
Okay, so it would be, if it were 50-50.
Unless you own it as right of survivorship, like husband and wife did, they can go after all of it. In other words, let's just use your son, because it's a good example. It brings out several things in real estate
Yeah.
that are clear. If you'd say you and your son find a piece of property and you decide to buy it. Now, we can say 50-50, or we could say 90-10 or 80-20.
Yeah.
Let's just say 50-50.
Yeah,
You're co-owners, right?
Co-owners.
Now, you can make it right of survivorship with a non-spouse. You just got to say certain language in the deed. But typically people don't.
right.
So you buy it, and now you own 50% of it. And if you don't name how much percent you own, the default is half each.
Right.
But you could say 7/10 and 3/10.
Sure.
But you have co-ownership. That's the key.
That's right.
And so if you have co-ownership, now at your death, if you've been in long-term care, you would have racked up a bill. And if you're in long-term care, you get eligible, TennCare pays your bill, right?
Right.
Now, when they pay your bill like that, they keep track of that. So let's say you're in the nursing home for 3 years, 3.6 years, I think is the average, and you rack up a $300,000 bill.
Yeah.
And so at your death, when they exercise the estate recovery program, the TennCare recovery program, they will come after whatever's in your estate. Now, your ownership of that house is in your estate.
Right.
Now, when they come after that, they're going to look into that, and they're going to say, okay, Jeff has some real estate. I don't know if it's going to pay everything we are owed, but whatever it is, we'll take what we can get and move on, right?
Right.
We can only get what we can get. We can't go after any more than what you have.
Right.
So let's say the only thing is this house. So they come after this house. Now, they can come after your share, but they run into a problem. They can only recover, meaning get the money they're owed, because they don't want your half of the house, they want the money it gets when it sells.
Right.
Because that's what their job is.
Right.
And so they have to approach the other owner or owners and say, we want to sell this, and so we can't sell it without all the owner's permission.
Right.
I mean, try to put a deed through a title insurance company without all the owners.
That's right. Not gonna work.
Signature on it and see what happens. It's not going anywhere.
It's not going.
And so, I mean, you can't do it. It's common law jurisprudence. The owners have to be involved. And so if the other owner, like your son, just says, no, I refuse to sell my house. And that could be maybe because years ago when we bought it together, we had a purpose, and I want to continue with that purpose.
Sure.
Or it could be something we set up for this very purpose.
Yeah.
We set it up for the very purpose of the co-owner saying, I'm not going to sell.
That's right.
That's exactly what we do. And so he says, no, I'm not going to sell. They cannot make him sell. There's nothing they can do. They don't get mad about it because they understand how that works. That it's in the law that you cannot force an owner to sell a piece of property. In some debt, if you can go after that piece of property, they go after it like they're doing to you. But
Yeah.
they can't go after his.
Yeah.
It's not his bill. They can't. Your asset does not impute upon a co-owner just because you were in long-term care. So and so they can't sell. Now what they do by law, and when I say by law, the law says if you can't get all the owners to agree, then you have to abandon pursuing it anymore. It's called, they categorize it as an inaccessible asset, and they move on to whatever they can get. That's what recovery is all about.
No,
In this
let me
case,
ask, that begs a question though. Does that mean they move on and never come back?
That's right. I mean, after a while, they can't, yeah, that's right.
So let's say,
Well, first of all,
let's say 5 years down the road, he decides to sell it.
okay, but who's he selling it to? Another owner?
Another owner.
Okay.
Somebody else.
Good.
So does TennCare still have?
Well, they have a statute of limitations.
Okay,
And
that was my question.
Yeah, but if we're doing it for this reason, we would advise them, we need to just stay a co-owner for a while.
Yeah.
Or stay a co-owner that's willing to refuse to sell.
Yeah.
I mean, again, in your scenario, I find it hard to believe that you sell it to a third party and they would agree to sell it so that TennCare can collect on it, unless they make them some kind of great deal.
No, that's
I don't know what kind of great deal.
No, that's my question. I mean, down the road, 10 years, whatever it is, if whoever is the left owner, the owner that is left with the property,
And 10 years down the road,
decides to sell it, then TennCare's out of the picture.
That's right.
Okay, all right,
I mean, creditors' rights only exist for a certain length of time.
okay,
But if they're not, they can't be in perpetuity.
okay.
So, but I mean, that's a good example. Now, if you're husband and
That's
wife,
interesting.
You're husband and wife, even if you don't say it on the deed, you own the property as right of survivorship.
Right.
Unless it says something else. If it just says, you and wife, husband and wife, it's right of survivorship. If it
Right.
says husband and wife
Exactly.
as an undivided 1/2 interest each, then we're defining the ownership. Now, if it's right of survivorship, it's not a co-ownership. Right of survivor, we call it, has something like the 5 unities, and you're one unit by marriage. Okay, is the theory. And so, if the husband goes in the nursing home and racks up a bill and passes away, they have jurisdiction to come after the house. They'll let they put a lien on the house. They'll let the spouse live there until they die if they're living there. But after their death, they'll come after that house and they go after all of it. Because it's not a fractional ownership as right of survivorship. You own it as one.
Yeah,
It's treated a little differently.
yeah,
And it's exposed a little differently. And so that's one of the things we deal with all the time. So one of the classic moves we do, which is important because TennCare estate recovery will attach to real estate if you die and pass away with any indicia of ownership at your death. And right of survivorship is ownership.
wow, okay.
And so what we do is if you got a husband in a nursing home, what we do is we exclude the asset, which means we can take it, the value of it out of the countable assets column, right? And we can put it over here in the excluded assets. It's still a countable asset, but they're just not gonna use it for eligibility purposes.
Right.
To figure out what you owe. Figure out what you own.
Right,
Then as soon as we're approved, as soon as we get the letter from TennCare, it says husband's approved for care, we're ready to pay, here's your patient, here's what you have to pay every month, here's what we'll pay every month.
right,
Now we go in and have that person, either if he's able to do it, or through his power of attorney, do a quick claim deed, we sign all right, title, and interest over to the other spouse.
okay.
Now, there's not possible for that institutionalized spouse to pass away with any indicia of ownership with the house. So it's now is protected and escapes estate recovery.
Interesting.
But the exposure now is it all resides with this community spouse. And if the community spouse goes into care, now we're starting to get one hand tied behind our back because have all of it, okay? And there's no spouse for them to sign all their right, title, and ownership into, because if we gave it back to the institutionalized spouse, it would just over-resource them and ruin their eligibility. So now we have to do something else with it. So there's things we can do, but we have to look long-term. Now, if the community spouse never goes into care, then everything's great. The house has been saved. She can leave it to the kids like they planned to do in the first place. Everything's great. But the better thing to do is put it in a trust ahead of time. We don't have to worry about any of that. It's just not in the picture anymore.
Okay.
That's the better thing to do.
Okay.
I mean, there's always something we can do.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Well, let's see if we've got a question here for us. Good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Yeah, hi. My name is Nick. I'm down here at Napa in Lawrenceburg, and I was wanting to know if I could get some quotes on possibly running some ads on the station.
Okay. Call 762-6200 for that, okay?
762-6200.
Yes, sir.
All right, I do appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Sorry about that. We are a radio station, so that happens. Very good. 8:36 this morning.
I have a son that works for, well, not for NASA, but works for Blue Origin, who contracts to NASA.
Oh, okay.
But that's out of Huntsville.
Oh, okay. Good deal.
And he's proud as punch with the Artemis program going on.
Oh, yeah.
He's
yeah.
actually the, well, they haven't sent it up yet, but when we were younger, we called it the lunar module.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's called the HLM, the human landing system. And my son, who's an automobile engineer,
Yeah.
he works for Blue Origin, and he has designed the landing suspension for that thing.
Oh, wow.
And because he's an automotive engineer, he's also the lead engineer on the rover that's going back.
How cool is that?
That is cool. He's working on the coolest car ever.
That is.
But you know, when they do this landing system, it's got a suspension, right? And suspension's a suspension. But the criteria for this thing is I don't know the exact numbers, but they have to, when you land on the moon, you got to worry about landing on stuff like rocks and ridges,
Sure.
right? Because it's pretty rough terrain.
Yeah.
And so they have like a 20-degree slope that in the ground to worry about, and a certain amount of like an 18-inch dip or an 18-inch bump. So the worst case scenario is you land on a 20-degree slope, the downslope side goes into a hole, and the upslope side goes on a rock. It makes it even more of a tilt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And they can't tip over. Now, he has told me that there have been several Japanese landers, unmanned ones, that have been sent up there, and a couple that when they landed they tipped over because they're coming down and they're moving laterally too. And so when they hit the ground,
right.
if the center of gravity is too high, that will tip over. So there's a real race going on to get up there.
That's interesting.
The moon's probably turned into quite the junkyard. But,
Yeah.
But anyway, he said NASA, and then he said here in Lawrenceburg.
Well, actually, he was talking about Napa.
Oh, he said Napa.
Napa
I
Auto
thought
Parts.
he said NASA. So that whole thing was. Now it's time for you. Now it's time for you to say to me, Stan.
See?
That's the way it starts.
At least I'm not alone, Stan.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you for correcting me and letting me know I sort of made a fool of myself in the last 2 or 3 minutes.
It's okay, man. Because it was interesting to find out that, though. I didn't know that you had a son that was connected.
And I should have known because I thought he said NASA here in Lawrenceburg.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I'm not NASA in Lawrenceburg. Napa. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, he was at Napa.
Well, tell him to give you a discount on the ads because I said so.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it.
All right, so we talk about this. You know, the home ownership is a real important thing when we're dealing with estate planning because there are so many things out there that can get after it.
Yeah.
Now, why are there so many things out there that can get after your real estate? The answer is obvious. If it's not obvious to you, I'm going to tell you what it is. Because it's such a big ticket item.
Yeah.
Usually, if you can go after something like the home, you can always recover something.
Yeah.
Now, the home may not be worth what you're owed, but it's something.
Yeah.
And that's what exposes it. And the legislature through the years have realized that this is people's biggest asset. And if we're going to get the program paid for, they have to have something they can go after.
Sure.
You know, but they've always recognized, the concept, that the home is a sacred place for people, right? And so they've always let it be exposed, but not completely exposed.
Right.
But other real estate's completely off the board. That's fair game for them to come after.
Right.
So if you own multiple pieces of real estate, you're going to have some exposure on the other ones because the primary residence gets a little extra care and treatment, but they can still come after it. And they come after it for most people because of the way it's set up, because of the right of survivorship.
Sure.
And because they don't tie up the ownership. Now, you know, if you, the example I was given with you and the son buying this piece of property, that
Right.
that'd be protected from the get-go, right?
Yeah,
Now, we set that up sometimes to make it work that way.
yeah,
Now, if you were getting ready to go into care and we didn't do the trust, because the trust is the perfect solution, because you don't own it at all, the trust owns it.
that's
You
right.
get by your 60 years or 60 months and there's nothing to worry about.
That's right.
Now, but if you come to me and somebody's in care and we got to hustle and get this property protected, you can't go to your son and say, hey, I'm going to give you 20% of this house. Because if you give him 20% of his house, you just gave him a gift that's the value of 20% of the fair market value of the house. And we got that to worry about. So at the last minute, we almost have to have people buy into it. But
Yes.
it's kind of a bargain in the grand scheme of things, because if your son could pay for 20% of the house and he's going to inherit it anyway, he's kind of getting 80% of it.
Yeah.
Plus maybe his 20% back in other assets you leave that child.
Right.
So there's ways to work that. It's now, there's a special exception in the law. I managed to do it a couple times. And one time I was able to set it up in advance, and that is if you have somebody goes into care and you have you own property with a sibling, so it has to be a brother or sister, right?
That's right.
And I mean, you just have the other sibling. I mean, we're talking about the one in care, but the other sibling that's not in care just has to have an ownership interest for at least a year before you go into care. Now, a year is a smaller time frame when we're dealing with some of the time frames we deal with.
Right.
So, if you can set that up, you know, have them buy 10% interest, or you could give them. The one I set up, the brother owned it all. Sister lived with him, and they were living together for a while, and they're probably going to continue living together.
Right.
And she couldn't afford to buy 20%, so we just gave her 20%. Now we got that 5 years to worry about, but if I can remember, that's been a while. It's probably passed by now.
Yeah.
So now she has her 20%, which she owned the day he gave it to her, but now there's no look back on that 20% because it was a gift.
Right.
So now if either one of them goes into care, we've satisfied the exception. We have a sibling that has an ownership in the property.
Okay.
And they've had this ownership and lived together in the same house for more than 1 year prior to going into care. If that's the case, the end result of that is the institutionalized spouse can give all right, title, and interest of whatever their percentage is into it to the other owner without triggering any penalty period.
Okay.
I mean, just give it to them. So,
That's interesting.
and the other one we like to set up, if we can, is the child caregiver exception, and that works like this: if you live in the home with somebody taking care of mom, okay,
Yeah.
and you take care of her for at least 2 years prior to her going into care, you can the reward for that is when mom goes into care, she can literally deed the house to you, and there's no strings attached.
Okay.
So they can just give it to you. And even if it's a non-spouse, which would normally be a gift. Well, actually, it is a gift, but it's an exempt gift.
Sure.
There are no strings attached. There's no penalty. There's no time period. There's no
Okay.
5-year look-back rule. You can give it to them the day before you apply for TennCare. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
But there's fourth criteria to meet that. And here's what the first one is: it has to be a child. Okay. Now here's what I've run into. Often I'll find out it's a granddaughter or a grandchild or it's an in-law.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, who's taking care of the child? Well, my son's wife is doing most of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Say, well, it has to be a child. That's the first one. Second one is that you have to move into mom's house, not mom move into yours. That's one we run into because, you know, people live lives, they have jobs, they have things to do, and so they'll move the person that needs care in with them and take care of them there.
Right.
You got to move into mom's house and live there and take care of them. Okay. Now, usually when it comes up where that fits, is people have already been there doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's another one. Now, the second one is you got to be taking care of them for at least 2 years before they go into care. That's this third one. And the fourth one is actually one of the easier ones to get, and that is you have to get a doctor's opinion that says that your care over that 2 years rose to the level of keeping that person from going into the public system of TennCare
Sure.
for that 2 years.
Sure.
And they're usually pretty freely giving that, you know,
Right.
because it's hard to gauge that.
Yeah.
And so if you satisfy all those four things, now what that means is the person that owns the house can just deed the whole thing to the caregiver child, and it's a done deal. The
Yeah.
entire thing, no penalty, you never have to look at it again.
Yeah.
And that's a special exception, but it fits sometimes. And
Yeah.
when it does, we like to use it. Now, it doesn't help the other assets, but it does help the house, the primary residence. So, And that's
Wow.
usually a big.
That's an interesting one. I haven't heard that one.
I've exercised that quite a few times, and I've actually set that up ahead of time. People come and they say, you know what, I want to do some pre-planning because I've got Alzheimer's disease and it's progressive, and I'm really worried someday I'm going to get there. And that's smart thinking on that person's part.
Sure.
And so we might be able to set something like that if we can find a child that's willing to move in and take care of them. And usually in those cases, there's somebody already doing it.
Yeah.
And I'll lay this out, and if it's practical for them to do it, we'll do it. But sometimes people say, you know, I can't do that because I got a job, I got two kids, and it's not practical. And I get that. I mean,
Sure.
it is a specific example, but they will scrutinize each and every one of those rules.
Okay.
And when they say child, it means a child. It doesn't, I mean, which would mean an adopted child.
Yeah.
But if it's, you know, if you're an in-law or a grandchild,
Yeah.
that's a deal breaker.
Yeah, we're getting to that age and beginning to wonder if we have a kid that will take care of us.
Yeah. Well, you know, I always say,
Maybe they
we
will.
sure don't want to count on
And
it.
I'm hoping they don't have to.
I mean,
So.
we sure don't want to bank on it because, you know, you want your kids to have their own lives and stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody wants that to happen. I mean, you
Absolutely.
would prefer that, you know, they call it age in place. And you would prefer that somebody takes care of you while you're home if you need it. But
Yeah.
then most people think about what kind of a burden that would be for their loved ones, and they kind of don't want them to do that.
Yep. Yep.
But, you know, a lot of people do that, especially here in the South. You know, people are very family oriented, and they just do, you know, they just do what the Mosaic law says, you know.
Yeah.
Which is that you have an obligation to take care of your parents.
Yep. Absolutely.
They took care of you, they raised you, now you raise them, and it kind of is a wash.
That's right.
And so,
That's right.
but around here, a lot of people do that anyway. Just because
They do.
Just because they are.
Yeah.
Just because they're good people.
They do. We've lived through some examples of that.
Yep.
So absolutely.
But again, if I go back to that phone call, I mean, even if the situation is dire, I can think of one case where there was just almost nothing to work with. I mean, it seemed like everything I thought of, there was a reason why it wouldn't work, which is kind of unusual. But we actually managed to do something and protect a fair amount of property. But again, it wasn't an ideal result as if we'd been dealing with it a couple of years ahead of time before certain things happened. But we were able to do something that was better than just doing nothing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember there was like one thing we could do, and it was a pretty good result, but
Yeah.
it was a shame we couldn't do more. But
That seems to be,
but that's what we could do.
Yeah. That seems to be a recurring thing that we say here with you is doing something is much better than doing nothing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you do nothing, I always say that gives a predictable result.
Yes.
I can tell you exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you, again, when you think of estate planning, you know, when you're talking about doing something, the focus is on the word planning. Planning doesn't mean at the last minute.
Yeah.
Planning, if you do it a little bit ahead of time, it doesn't even have to be a long time. If you do it a little bit ahead of time, you can save everything. I mean, just hands down, 100%.
Yep.
And if you know, and if you put it in a trust, and you never have to deal with long-term care, which let me put it this way: everybody passes away, right?
Yeah.
But not everybody becomes incapacitated and goes into long-term care and then passes away.
Right.
I mean, so if you know, long-term care is an if, dying is a when.
Yeah.
But if you don't go into long-term care, then at death, your property's in this trust that works like any other trust, passes all the property to your kids, probate free,
Sure.
and all those great things we talk about the trust
Sure.
do. It's just that it serves, the asset protection trust serves its greatest purpose during life if the
Yep.
creditor arises. And the creditor that we're worried about arising is long-term care. And if it does rear its ugly head, you're in excellent financial position. Go ahead and rear it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's bad enough to have to deal with it and go in it. But if it's even more problematic if you got to worry about paying for it.
That's right.
But you're perfectly set up to become eligible and have plenty of money to have your trust or your heirs pay for your amenities.
Yeah.
You know, because when TennCare is paying your bill, there's only certain things they pay for. Like
Right.
a perfect example is they'll pay for a semi-private room.
Sure.
But let's suppose, you know, Jeff is in a nursing home, and of course he's ornery and hard to get along with, so he's going to have a private room, right?
Yeah.
And so, but they won't pay for that.
Yeah.
But now you have all the assets that we protected that you can throw in $200 a month or $300, whatever it is, for you to have a private room, because that's not something they'll pay for.
Right.
Now you're not paying the $10,000 or $12,000 a month lion's share of stuff. You're only paying for these amenities, the things that they don't pay.
Right.
And now since we protected all your assets, you got more than enough to last for
Yeah.
50 years, right? Because you're only paying this little bit extra. But what we're doing is we have the wherewithal now to enhance your quality of life there by giving you a private room, maybe hiring somebody to come in and read books. I mean, there's all kinds of things people can do.
Sure.
To make it a better stay for them there.
Sure.
But they don't offer that stuff under the basic care. You have to, those are the extras you have to pay for.
Yeah.
But now we're only paying for the extras, which is this sliver. We're not the whole thing. You know, I know on radio you can't see what I'm doing, but
Well, we're on video too, Bill, by the way.
that's right. That's right.
Such an expense. I just talked to someone this week who is going to talk to me about liquidating their property because their parent is paying like $8,000 to $9,000 a month, and for them it's probably too late to do much of anything else. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, I can't reach out to them, but they're welcome to reach out to me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think there's probably always something we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I guess there's not much to do if you come to me and everything's already been exhausted.
Yeah.
I can't save what's not there.
That's right.
But there's usually something we can do. Now, and you just have to have an open mind because maybe somebody's been paying privately for, I don't know, a year or 8 months or something like that.
Right.
And we realize, okay, we can stop the bleeding and save this. I mean, you just have to have an open mind and say, well, we can't do much about what's happened.
Right.
But we can go forward and protect what we have left. And so,
Yeah.
Don't kick yourself because hindsight is hindsight. We can't fix that. If you didn't
Well,
know, you didn't know.
I know this would be the dire circumstance, the what you call the emergencies. In other words, the not prepared plan. So let's say that you are in that situation. You've been paying self-pay, and you're running out of funds, but you still own a piece of real estate. Okay. And so the family says, well, I guess we'll just sell the real estate to pay for. So if you're already there,
Okay.
is there a way to do something besides just sell the real estate and keep paying?
Absolutely, because like I said, for almost the majority of this show, the real estate, assuming it's the primary residence, is an excluded asset. You do not have to sell it to pay for care. So let's look at it this way. Let's use a nice easy number, $100,000. Got a $100,000 house. Now I know that's low, but it's an easy number to do on radio, right?
Okay.
And to be eligible for care,
Okay.
you can only have $2,000, no more than $2,000.
Right.
Now the house is a countable asset. So if your countable assets is nothing but the home, you have $100,000 countable asset. So technically you're $98,000 over resourced, right?
Okay.
So how are you ever going to get eligible with this house?
Right.
Other than sell it and use it to pay, right?
Right.
Now, the law doesn't require that. The law will exclude the primary residence, which means we're going to take this $100,000 out of your equation when we're looking for eligibility. And now, it's just gone down $100,000. So now you're eligible. So my answer to your question is, you don't have to sell this house. What you do is file a 10-care application because you're eligible because the house is, take the house out of the equation. And now you're eligible. Now they'll start paying that bill and you're not paying that. You're not paying that $10,000 a month anymore. And like I said earlier, if it's a husband and wife and one of the spouses is in care, once that person's approved, about 3 months after you file the application, they're going to pass everything to the community spouse when it's not in care.
Okay.
And now, at that person's death, we would have protected the entire house. And 10-care would have paid the bill from that day, the day we got eligible going forward. No more bleeding to death financially. So that's a big win. That was not out the door yet. If you sell the house and spend the money on care, I can't recover.
It's just gone.
You can't recover. But you don't have to. There's a lot of law in 10-care and in every state's version of 10-care about the primary residence.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll hear people say that when you apply for 10-care, you have to always declare an intent to return home. Okay. And people say, well, Aunt Gertrude's never coming back. She's so bad off. She's going to be. Well, that doesn't matter. Because it's the declaration of an intent to return home that gives the primary residence that excluded status. And we can use that excluded status to our benefit. And we not only do a benefit, we keep you from selling it, we can also keep 10-care estate recovery from coming after death. We do that on almost every case. So if you're in that boat, I mean, I did this on my Nashville radio show because I know people that work for 10-care listen to that. And the question come up about the word spend down. And everybody says spend down means you got to spend your money on the cost of care. And I put out this challenge. If you work for 10-care or anybody else, you want to go through the law, please, you're welcome to come to me or come to me on the radio and show me where it says you have to spend your assets down on the cost of care. That's what everybody does because that's what they think they do. But come show me where it is. And you know why I give that challenge? Because I've looked and it's not there.
Okay.
You do not have to spend it on the cost of care. So what we do is we do spend down by recategorizing other stuff that you can keep and not use it on the cost of care. That's perfectly acceptable. And we know it's acceptable because I've been doing it for 10 years and it's always been accepted. So
Yeah.
This house, if somebody's in a boat where they have this house and they think this is all we have left, we got to sell it to pay for
And
care.
just say there's no spouse.
Well, if there's no spouse, we can still exclude it. And what we can do is somehow have one of the children buy it at a very, very reduced amount. So
Okay.
it's not the ideal situation, but it's a solution.
Okay.
So-
Okay. Interesting.
Or we can sell the house and protect about 70% of the funds.
Okay.
So if you have the $100,000 house and you have no kids or the kids don't want it and you're a single person, we can sell the house and protect about 65 to 70% or $65,000 to $70,000 of that $100,000.
Okay.
So there's always something we can do. Again, the idealness of it dwindles down as we get more and more painted into a corner, but there's always something you can do that.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, that's an excellent example because that's a good way of looking at some of the stuff we do if you make that the only asset because it makes it clearer what we do.
Yeah, you got, let's just say that's all they have left.
Yeah.
They've done this spin down already, and now they're,
Please don't throw in the towel yet. I mean,
Don't
we're
throw it
not.
in.
We're not. You know,
Okay.
We're not.
That's interesting
We're
to
not
know.
pinned. We're not pinned to the mat just yet.
we're in the corner.
We're still holding our own, but
Yes.
there's something we can do. You know.
Yeah, we're in the corner.
And that's what we do. You know, that's what I do at Pierchoski Estate Law and Pierchoski Elder Law. You know, not only do we do that, we do the 10-care eligibility like that. We also do the trust work you can do way ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's so much more beneficial if you do it with a little bit of time ahead of time. So when these things come, all of these things are non-issues when you have the trust plan in place ahead of time.
Awesome.
So.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Always
So,
withstand.
as we get to the end, give me a call, Pierchoski State Law, 931-363-7222.
Yeah, we got about a 3-minute window here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go over my seminars coming up real quick.
Yes.
Well, the next one coming up is April 25th.
Yeah.
I guess it's 2 weeks from tomorrow. And it's going to be at the Marshall County Memorial Library, which is in Lewisburg. It's 310 Old Farmington Road in Lewisburg, Tennessee. It's at 10 o'clock that Saturday in the morning. It's we call it Wills, Trust, and the Nursing Home. So we're going to talk about wills and trust, and we're going to talk about this asset protection trust that's so popular. My next one's going to be in May. The day escapes me, but it's a Saturday, I know, and it's going to be in Pulaski. But I'll pick up on that next week. I'll get those.
Sure.
Those dates for that one. So, but it's, if you want to come to one, Marshall, Lewisburg's not far away. If you want to come to that, maybe you can't come. Couldn't come to the one in March, and you can't come to the one in May. Then come to that one. It's a nice drive.
Absolutely.
It's a nice drive. Just pay attention to the speed signs.
Pay attention to speed signs, and find after it's over, you can find a good place to eat over there.
Yeah, there's several.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
But no, excellent questions, and when the callers ask good questions like that, and you ask questions like that, you're thinking the right way. You're thinking the right way, and that's what everybody's been trained to not do. They've been the way you think is what's on the internet is nuggets of truth and gospel, and it's not.
Yeah. Well, we got a full 2 minutes before we have to go, and I just run into, of course, having conversations with you every week. Kind of puts this at the top of my mind, especially when I'm dealing with people who are dealing with estates or their family's properties or this, that, and the other. And it seems to always come up that okay, maybe there's something you need to do different or whatever. So.
And again, if you hadn't done it, don't beat yourself up. We can do something now. It would have been better to do it a few years ago, certainly. But
And I find myself having to say, I cannot give you legal advice.
Yeah. Well, it's like health. If you're something you're wrong, and you say, I wish I'd taken care of this 3 years ago.
Yep.
I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. You take care of it now and just live with play the cards you're dealt.
Right. Good deal.
Maybe we can draw from the deck and get lucky, but we just have to, when adversity comes around, you just have to embrace it. And once you get over shock of it, then just deal with it, fine.
Well, let's give them your number again and
Sure.
address and everything over in Pulaski. Stan Pierchoski, of course, Pierchoski State Law. And
Our telephone number is
yeah.
931-363-7222. Our address there is 310 West Jefferson Street. We're right off the square, corner of 3rd and Jefferson. Very busy corner. Come on and see us, call us, come by, call
Yeah.
us, get RSVP'd for the seminar.
Yeah.
I think you'll like it. If you come to the seminar, you'll like it. Everybody does.
Well, I know you won't be disappointed, and great information. Always great information here on Fridays, and we'll see you next time.
Always a pleasure, Joe.
All right, buddy. See you next time.
This is WDXE, W287 AA, and W237.
Oh no, 2 seconds of dead air there. You better get
Broadcast services
better
of
get
Prospect Communications.
practiced up.